In the 1970s, our blue-collar grandfathers knew how to make Christmas dinner count. Their work at the table didn't just feed people. It created meals so real they turned cheap meat into something worth remembering. Dinners that have been lost to time.
And for a hot meal, without that warmed-over taste, how about hot lamb sandwiches? Made with last night's main dish and piping hot, rich lamb gravy.
These 30 forgotten blue-collar Christmas dinners from the 1970s might sound too plain today, but they carried working families through long shifts, small paychecks, and beyond. Let's rediscover forgotten blue-collar Christmas dinners from the 1970s that have disappeared. Walk into Grandpa Joe's Detroit kitchen on December 25th, 1975, and watch him making Salisbury steak. He'd mix ground beef with breadcrumbs, an egg, diced onion, salt, and pepper, then shape the mixture into oval patties. The patties fried in a cast-iron skillet until browned on both sides. He'd remove them, pour a can of brown gravy into the same skillet, add the patties back, cover, and simmer until cooked through. The gravy cost 35 cents and made cheap ground beef taste like steak. The dinner cost $2 and fed 6 people. The Salisbury steaks tasted savory and meaty, with the canned gravy rich and salty. Salisbury steak disappeared by 1983 when people decided it was TV dinner food and refused to make it at home. The tradition died when frozen Swanson dinners became synonymous with Salisbury steak, and nobody remembered it was once a real dinner working families made from scratch. Stand beside Grandpa Bill's Ohio kitchen on December 24th, 1974, and watch him frying pork chops. He'd dredge thin-cut pork chops in seasoned flour, then fry them in hot lard until golden and crispy. After removing the chops, he'd make milk gravy by whisking flour into the hot grease, then slowly adding milk until it thickened. The chops went back into the gravy to stay warm. The dinner cost $1.50 and fed 6 people. The pork chops were crispy outside and juicy inside, and the milk gravy was thick, peppery, and savory. Fried pork chops with milk gravy disappeared by 1984 when people stopped cooking with lard and started thinking fried food was unhealthy. The tradition died when baked pork chops replaced fried, and milk gravy was forgotten entirely. Walk into Grandpa Frank's Pennsylvania kitchen on December 25th, 1977, and watch him frying beef liver with onions for Christmas dinner. He'd slice beef liver thin, soak it in milk for an hour to remove the bitter taste, dredge it in seasoned flour, and fry it quickly in hot bacon grease. No more than 2 minutes per side, or it would turn grainy. He'd fry sliced onions in the same skillet until caramelized and pile them on top of the liver. The dinner cost $1 and fed 6 people because liver was one of the cheapest cuts you could buy. The liver tasted rich and iron-heavy, with a texture that was soft and tender when cooked correctly. The onions were sweet and caramelized, cutting through the liver's intensity. Fried beef liver with onions disappeared by 1983 when people decided liver was disgusting, and butchers stopped displaying it in meat cases. The tradition died when younger generations refused to eat organ meats, and liver became something only old people ate. Grandpa Frank stopped making it for Christmas in 1980 when his grandchildren gagged at the smell and refused to sit at the table while he cooked it, even though liver had been a nutritious, affordable protein for his family through the Depression, and he believed wasting any part of the animal was sinful. 45 dinners erased, 5 left. These used organ meats, wild game, salt pork, things your grandfather hunted, trapped, and bought because they cost almost nothing. He fed families on food you throw away. That's the difference between survival and waste. Here are the last 5. Stand beside Grandpa Earl's Kentucky kitchen on December 24th, 1973, and watch him making oxtail stew. Oxtails were the tails of cattle, cut into segments with meat clinging to the bone. They were cheap because nobody wanted them. He'd brown the oxtails in a Dutch oven, then add onions, carrots, potatoes, tomatoes, and beef broth. The stew simmered on the stovetop for 4 hours until the meat fell off the bones and the broth turned rich and gelatinous from the collagen. The dinner cost $1.50 and fed 8 people. Oxtails tasted rich, beefy, and gelatinous, with the meat tender and falling off the bone. The broth was thick and flavorful, almost like gravy. You ate oxtails with your hands, sucking the meat and marrow off the bones. Oxtail stew disappeared by 1985 when oxtails became expensive. They went from 50 cents a pound to $8 a pound when chefs discovered them and put them on fancy restaurant menus. The tradition died when the cheapest cuts of meat became luxury items, and working-class families who'd been eating oxtails for generations couldn't afford them anymore. Grandpa Earl stopped making oxtail stew for Christmas in 1984 when the price tripled, and he switched to chuck roast instead, which was cheaper but nowhere near as flavorful or tender. Walk into Grandpa Bill's Tennessee kitchen on December 25, 1975, and watch him making salt pork with greens. He'd slice salt pork into thick pieces and fry them in a cast-iron skillet until crispy like bacon. He'd remove the pork, then add fresh collard greens, or turnip greens, to the hot grease, along with a little water, and simmer them for an hour until tender. The greens cooked in the pork grease and became rich and savory. The dinner cost 50 cents and fed 6 people. The salt pork was intensely salty and fatty, melting in your mouth like bacon. The greens were tender, smoky, and rich from the pork grease. You'd serve it with cornbread to soak up the pot liquor, the flavorful liquid left in the bottom of the pot. Salt pork with greens disappeared by 1984 when grocery stores stopped selling salt pork, and people decided it was too salty and too greasy. The tradition died when Southern foodways became regional instead of universal, and younger generations stopped eating greens cooked in pork grease. Grandpa Bill stopped making it for Christmas in 1982 when his doctor told him to stop eating so much salt, even though he'd eaten salt pork his entire life and lived to be 87 years old. Stand in Grandpa Joe's Michigan Lake Cottage kitchen on December 24, 1976, and watch him frying perch. He'd ice-fished for perch in December, caught a bucketful, filleted them immediately, and kept them frozen until Christmas. On Christmas Eve, he'd dredge the perch fillets in seasoned flour and fry them in hot oil until golden and crispy. Perch were small. Each fillet was only a few inches long, so each person got 5 or 6 fillets. The dinner cost nothing because he'd caught the fish himself, and it fed 6 people. Perch were sweet and delicate, with a mild flavor and flaky texture. The flour coating made them crispy and helped them hold together during frying. Fried perch didn't disappear entirely. Michigan still loves perch, but serving it for Christmas dinner did. By 1984, fewer working-class families ice-fished for food, and perch became something you ordered at fish fries, not something you caught and fried at home. The tradition died when fishing went from necessity to hobby, and wild-caught fish became too much work when you could buy frozen fish sticks instead. Grandpa Joe stopped serving perch at Christmas in 1983 when his family said they'd rather have store-bought shrimp, even though fresh-caught perch was infinitely better. Walk into Grandma Betty's Michigan kitchen on December 25, 1976, and watch her making meatloaf for Christmas dinner. She'd mix ground beef with breadcrumbs, an egg, diced onion, ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, salt, and pepper. The mixture went into a loaf pan, and she'd spread a thick layer of ketchup mixed with brown sugar over the top. It baked for an hour until the ketchup glaze caramelized. The dinner cost $1.50 and fed 8 people. The meatloaf tasted savory and slightly sweet, with the ketchup glaze sticky and tangy. Meatloaf didn't disappear entirely, but serving it for Christmas dinner did. stand in Grandpa Earl's Kentucky kitchen on December 24th, 1973, and watch him frying chicken in a cast-iron skillet. He'd cut a whole chicken into pieces, soak them in buttermilk, dredge them in seasoned flour, and fry them in hot Crisco until golden and crispy. The kitchen filled with steam and the smell of fried chicken. The dinner cost $2 and fed 6 people. The chicken was crispy outside, juicy inside, with seasoned flour clinging to every piece. Fried chicken didn't disappear, but the tradition of making it at home for Christmas dinner did. He'd fry thick slices of bacon until crispy, remove them, then fry sliced onions in the bacon grease until caramelized. He'd dredge slices of beef liver in flour and fry them quickly in the same skillet, no more than 2 minutes per side or they'd turn grainy. The liver, onions, and crumbled bacon went on plates together. The dinner cost $1 and fed 6 people. The liver tasted rich and iron-heavy, the onions sweet, the bacon smoky. Walk into Grandpa Bill's North Carolina kitchen on December 25th, 1978, and watch him frying pig's feet. He'd buy pickled pig's feet in jars from the grocery store for 75 cents, drain them, coat them in seasoned flour, and fry them in hot oil until the skin was crispy and golden. Pig's feet were mostly skin, fat, and bone, with very little meat, but the skin turned into crispy, gelatinous bites when fried properly. The dinner cost $1 and fed 4 people. Pig's feet tasted rich, fatty, and gelatinous, with a texture that was chewy and slightly crunchy from the fried skin. You ate them with your hands, gnawing the meat and fat off the bones. They were an acquired taste. You either loved them or hated them. Fried pig's feet disappeared by 1983 when grocery stores stopped selling pickled pig's feet in jars, and people decided eating feet was disgusting. The tradition died when younger generations refused to eat anything that still looked like the animal it came from. Grandpa Bill stopped making pig's feet for Christmas in 1980 when his grandchildren said they looked gross and asked why he was eating dog food, even though pig's feet had been a delicacy for him his entire life and the only meat his family could afford during the Depression. Walk into Grandpa Frank's Pennsylvania kitchen on December 24th, 1974, and watch him cooking beef tongue. He'd buy a beef tongue from the butcher for $1. Nobody else wanted it. He'd simmer it in water with onions and bay leaves for 3 hours until tender. After cooling slightly, he'd peel off the thick outer skin, slice the tongue thin, and fry the slices in butter. He'd make gravy from the cooking liquid by whisking in flour and butter. Dinner cost $1 and fed 8 people. Beef tongue tasted rich and beefy, with a texture that was tender and slightly grainy, similar to pot roast, but more flavorful. The gravy was thick and savory. Most people couldn't tell it was tongue if you didn't tell them. It just tasted like really good beef. Beef tongue disappeared by 1983 when butchers stopped selling it and people decided eating tongue was disgusting. The tradition died when younger generations refused to eat organ meats or anything that reminded them the meat came from an animal. Grandpa Frank stopped making tongue for Christmas in 1980 when his grandchildren found out what it was and refused to eat another bite, even though they'd been happily eating it for years without knowing, and had always said it was delicious.